They're really, really important. Nobody talks about them, but they're very effective. Nobody will admit to making up their mind on that. But I think it goes a long way. A powerful image like that of a poor little guy with the government against him, and here's this family. They don't want to hurt the whole family. I really suggest you do that in every case. It's really effective, I think. For example, let me tell you about the time I did it with great effect. I had a client once, little gay guy from New York City. He was a photographer, and he was down here on a shoot. And he was in a gay bar on Westheimer, got in a fight with a big old guy. My little client stabbed this big guy in the back. The big guy was 6'5". My client was 5'6". The big guy was a .17 in his medical records when he was admitted to the emergency room. And he described the knife as a big old hunting knife. It was a pen knife. And the doctor described it as superficial scratches. So my poor client knew nobody in Houston but me. He would fly down here, little bitty guy, scared as could be. We're set for trial in the old 262nd, Doug Shaver's court. And I called a different client of mine, Big Ricky. He's a truck driver. I represented Big Ricky about 20 times. He was a crackhead. And he's no longer with us, but rest his soul, he sure came through for me this day. I knew Big Ricky had a large family. And he owed me about $1 million for all the trials I had done for him. So I said, Ricky, I'll give you $10,000 a day if you can pack that courtroom with your family. I show up Monday morning for trial. He must have had 30 extended family members looking like they're going to church. They're in suits and ties. We took up the whole first 3 rows of the courtroom. And I put my little gay client right in the middle. Big Ricky was this burly truck driver, had his arm around this little guy. And the state walked in and says, who are all these people? And I said, they're my witnesses. You ready? They didn't give me what I wanted, but on a 2 to 20 year case, they gave me a misdemeanor with 30 days in jail on the weekend, and we jumped the fuck all over that. Use your visual cues, folks. You're not under oath. Go for it. This is showtime. You got to do it. And by the way, the clients loved the game. They were so happy to be in on this thing. We were pulling the wool over the government's eyes. They thought it was the coolest thing they'd ever done. And you think my client was grateful for me bringing down 30 people to sit by him? He had no family here. The guy walked into court, a scared little guy. He walked out of court thinking he was the king of the world. And the graciousness that they give you when you pull off something like that, it's like being co-conspirators. It's really fun to do. You got to do it. Okay, folks, what else do we have left here? I hadn't got to the good jokes yet. All right. When a judge is riding your ass, cutting you off at the knees, may I suggest this approach? Don't snap back at him. Just turn to the jury and say, I kind of feel like Groucho Marx did. Groucho was married and divorced 4 or 5 times. And he once said that, my first wife and I got married by a judge. I should have gone to the jury. And that's why we're going to you, folks. You might have wondered. They're watching that judge every step of the way. And as long as you're not acting a horse's ass and deserve the judge riding your ass, just talk about, Your Honor, in the interest of fairness, we would ask you, and they're going to jump on your back and call, all you were asking for was him to be fair, and he jumps on you for that? The point is, you can get a lot of sympathy out of juries by letting the state and letting the judge ride your ass. Saddle up, folks. I couldn't give a damn. Really, if they're riding my butt, that means I'm doing something right. If they like you, that means you're laying down and rolling over. Okay, let's talk about using comedy with your clients, too. These poor folks are freaked out. They don't know if they're going to prison tonight or what. So I think it's a service to your client to give them a little levity. Now, you don't make fun of their cases. This is serious business. But if you can get them laughing a little, it calms everything down, and it can also really help your practice. Let me jump to the end, for example. I tell every client this at the end of their case. Very, very effective technique. I say, buddy, I hope you never need me again unless we're all getting real rich off of it. Then you tell them about contingent fees in personal injury cases. Isn't that beautiful? I get referrals, used to send them to Bob Wyckoff. I think y'all all know Bob. It's a great thing to do, and you ought to be milking your clients every time on that. Explain to them how it works. Wouldn't it be great if I could pay you instead of you paying me? Go for it. The clients love that stuff, and you're going to like it too when the referral checks start coming. Okay, here's a fun one. You ever had a client who's bitching and pissing and moaning about something he's got no right to be mad about? For example, you got a guy charged with murder, you get it reduced to a Class C assault, and he's whining because he's got to pay $200 in court costs. I got this out of my favorite book. It's called The International Dictionary of Obscenities and Vulgarities. And the best is the Russian. There's an expression in Russian for this very situation. The guy's screaming about something he's got no right to scream about. You say, Tiba ni yobut ni padmahave, which I think I screwed up. But in English, here's what it means. You're not being fucked. Stop wiggling your ass. Okay? And now, you tell me the client who can still be pissed off after that. You see what I mean? They're mad, they're angry, they're just all bent out of shape. Make them laugh and watch what happens. They chill out. Very effective technique, folks. It really is. I wish I could say this worked on coordinators. They're not known for their senses of humor. Here's another great one I stole from David Byers. I've never heard David say this, but I've heard of David saying this, and I really like the technique. I don't like talking people into pleading guilty. That's not our job. But we've all had situations where your client's looking at 25 to life, they're offering him 2 years, and he's got 3 years credit, and he won't take the bait. Now, is that crazy? But we see it every day down here. I've heard that Byers turns to his clients and says, buddy, I'm going to be so good in front of this jury, you're going to think we're winning. I love that line. Try it, folks. Because sometimes you're performing a great service to your client, getting him to take that deal. I mean, everybody's serving life in Texas, unless they were in a capital case. Those are folks who turned down 10 or 20 and got maxed out. So I don't like to pressure them, but you at least got to show them the light. Okay, when your client's complaining about how the cops are lying, tell them what I told you earlier. Oh, great, we got a lying cop. And they say, what do you mean? He's a liar. Well, that's good. Maybe we can catch him lying. It's very important. You don't want to try these cases based on the evidence against your client. You want to try these cases based on how screwed up the investigation is. Try the cops. You can do it every time in every case. They're not very smart. They all go to witness school. Watch the Jerry Spence clip that Eric posted. Spence talks to was an expert witness, not a cop, but he said, hey, before you testified, sir, you went to a class on how to testify in front of a jury, right? Now, what did they teach you in that class? They taught me to tell the truth. Oh, so you had to go to a class to learn how to tell the truth? Let me ask you, when you go home at night to talk to your wife, did you have to take a class to teach you how to tell the truth to your wife? You can have fun with this stuff, folks, and you can do it in every case. It's limitless. Okay, I know I'm supposed to talk about ethics here, and I have an ethics joke, so maybe this will work. There's a story about a little old lady. She owes a lawyer $100. So she walks into his office, opens up his purse, hands him a brand new $100 bill. The lawyer thanks her, and as she turns to walk out, the lawyer realizes that's not one brand new $100 bill, that's actually 2 brand new $100 bills stuck together. And that raises the classic ethical dilemma. Does he tell his partner? And the answer is no. Okay. Here's another ethical concept. And I got this many, many years ago at a conference called Sex, Drugs, and Violence in Santa Fe, an NACDL conference. Go to those if you can. It's so much better to get an open view of what the national lawyers are doing. We've got great lawyers here in Houston. I think we have the best bar in the criminal bar in the country. But the point is broaden your horizons. You get all kinds of fun techniques from all over the country. And this is one, I don't have any clue who said this, but I really like it. You know that you got that piece of evidence. It's not strictly admissible, but you've got a pack of firecrackers you just want to throw in and blow the whole thing up. And what's a dumb lawyer do? Mr. Prosecutor, would you like to approach the bench and discuss the admissibility of my evidence? Fuck that. Throw it in the box, folks. And here's the point. It is better to ask for forgiveness than permission. Okay? Because you ask for permission, you're not getting that in. You throw that skunk in the jury box, well, the judge can say, bailiff, get that skunk out of the box, but it's still going to stink. They do it to us, we need to start doing it to them. That dog hunts both sides of the river. Okay, I think before I open this up to questions, I want to tell my favorite courthouse story, and I will give credit or blame, your choice, to Paul Nugent, one of the best lawyers in town. He asked me not to say this, but Paul had a string of 22 not guilty verdicts going a couple years ago. He was a lawyer who represented Jeffrey Stern, the lawyer charged with shooting his wife. And it used to be Foreman, DeGuerin, and Nugent. Percy Foreman, Mike DeGuerin. And years ago over dinner one night, Paul told me this story. I love this story, and it's a real lawyer story, folks. It goes like this. One day, young Mike DeGuerin was about to pick a jury. So he goes to see the man himself, Percy Foreman. He says, Percy, I need your help. I got to pick a jury tomorrow. And Percy says, well, what's your target? What kind of juror do you want? And the story goes that Mike DeGuerin looks at Percy Foreman and he says, Percy, I want people who won't care about the facts and who don't understand the law. So Percy says, why don't you just try it to the bench? And that pretty much sums it up, folks. It really does. With many notable exceptions in Harris County, who'd have thunk that we would have such great XDA Republican judges like Stacey Bond and Kristen Guinea. So my comments do not apply to wonderful jurists like them, just all the rest of them, okay? I know I missed a lot of stuff, but I've only got about 10 minutes left, so I want to open it up to y'all. I can tell more jokes and do more stand-up here. You know what? Let me throw in these two. I missed these liners. I missed some of the jokes. Here's a fun one. First time I heard a lawyer talk about comedy in the courtroom was at one of Kent Schaefer's drug law seminars. He put them on every year back in the 80s. Invited a lawyer from Chicago, kind of the Dick DeGuerin of Chicago, Mr. Patrick Tuitt, T-U-I-T. Had a great line. He told us all that my clients always have names that end in vowels. Gambino, Soprano. He was a mob lawyer. So he said, you know the first thing I tell federal juries? You know what FBI really stands for? Find and blame Italians. I've been looking for the case to argue that on for years. I don't get organized crime, I get unorganized crime. But somebody use that, will you? It's great stuff. I love that. All right, here's another one. The preacher in the flood. Y'all know that story? It's kind of a church-type story. Again, you can use this in every case. It's great filler material, but fit your facts to the joke. It's about the preacher who lives in a part of Texas where every year it floods. And this springtime's no different. The flood waters start rolling in and the preacher's out on his porch. He's about knee-deep in water. Old guy rose up in a rowboat. He says, Preacher, flood's getting worse tomorrow. Climb up in here, I'll row you out of here. The preacher says, No, thank you. I've spoken to the Lord. He said he's going to save me. So the next day, the flood waters are even worse. The preacher's out on his porch. This time his head's bobbing up and down in the water. It's about neck high. And a motorboat cruises up. They say, Preacher, climb up in here. We'll motor you out of here. It's getting worse tomorrow. Preacher lifts his arms out of the water, says, No, thank you. I've spoken to the Lord. He said he's going to save me. Well, you see what's coming. The next day, it's even worse. Preacher's sitting on top of his chimney. The flood waters are lapping at the rafters. Helicopter comes down out of the sky, throws out a rope ladder. They get on the microphone. Preacher, climb up here. We'll fly you out of here. It's getting worse tomorrow. Same thing. Preacher looks up and says, No, thank you. I've spoken to the Lord. He said he's going to save me. Well, the Lord doesn't save him. Flood gets even worse. Preacher and his house get washed down the river, and he goes straight to heaven. First thing he does is he finds God, and he says to God himself, Hey, what happened? God, you said you were going to save me. God looks at the preacher and he says, Hey, I sent you 2 boats and a helicopter. Now, the point is this. Sometimes you can be looking the truth right in the eye, and you can't recognize it for what it is. The fact that my client's fingerprints aren't on that bag of dope, that's your rowboat. The fact that there's no cocaine in my client's blood, that's your motorboat. And the fact that my client has never been arrested on a drug case in his entire life, that's your helicopter. And here's your transition. don't let my client drown in the sea of reasonable doubt because you can't read the signs that are being sent to you. It's cheesy as hell, but these folks are weaned on cheese. They love that stuff. And to go with another maritime metaphor, here's a fun one in Galveston. How many times have you seen the fact pattern of 4 guys in a car, 1 bag of dope, they bust them all? I like to say the law enforcement broom sweeps wide, but I like this maritime metaphor too. You know those shrimpers out in the Gulf? They throw out their nets and they catch a lot of shrimp. And they catch a lot of turtles too. And you folks on the jury, you're the TEDs, the turtle excluder devices. You find those turtles and you throw them back in the water because that's my client. Again, give these people an image, something to talk about back there. They're not going to talk about affirmative links. They're going to talk about a poor innocent guy drowning because they can't read the signs that are being sent to them. People love metaphors. They love similes and stories. Give them what they want, folks. Let me see what else I missed. Here's a fun one. Had a murder case once in Denise Collins's court, and it's like I wrote the script. I couldn't believe it. It was a first-time homicide detective. Last I heard, he was in South Texas Law School. I'm not making this up. The lineup had 5 guys in jail jumpsuits. My client had on shorts and a Hawaiian shirt. 5 guys were under 6 foot. My client was 6'2". 5 guys were clean shaven. My client had a goatee. I looked at the jury and I said, Ray Charles could have picked that guy out of the lineup. Come on. And by the way, the cop let all 7 eyewitnesses view the lineup at one time. They chose him by committee. It's insane, just insane. And when you get something that's silly and that's stupid, that's when you crack your jokes. Make fun of the cop, not of the victim. Make fun of the investigation. Everybody's seen the Keystone Cops. It's sad and scary when they do this, but it's also pretty hilarious, folks. Play to that. You can play both sides of it. Show them how funny it is,